Money market madness. The hectic trading on world currency markets that finally put a brake on the rampant United States dollar. The combined assault on the Far East and European markets came in 3 days, ending on the first day of March. Central banks began selling their dollar holdings in packages of $5, $10, and $50 million at a time. Billions of dollars were sold around the world. Dealers and speculators, as they say, got their fingers badly burnt. Most economic experts, including the Americans, agree that the U.S. dollar was overvalued. But most Americans believe that a strong dollar, the superdollar, is a reflection of a strong and buoyant economy. Leaving the international money markets alone to find their own exchange levels has been one of the cornerstones of President Reagan's free market economics, Reaganomics, which he claims is restoring the United States to greatness.
4 years ago, we said we would invigorate our economy by giving people greater freedom and incentives to take risks and letting them keep more of what they earned. We did what we promised, and a great industrial giant is reborn. Tonight, we can take pride in 25 straight months of economic growth, the strongest in 34 years, a 3-year inflation average of 3.9%, the lowest in 17 years, and 7.3 million new jobs in 2 years, with more of our citizens working than ever before.
Such were the claims and promises in the President's State of the Union address earlier this year.
Welcome to Miami.
But a strong dollar has its disadvantages too. It's now worth 1.5 times as much as 3 years ago. The effect on tourism, for example, has been dramatic. Americans themselves can enjoy cheap holidays abroad, but there's been a slump in the number of visitors coming the other way because they cannot get value for money.
The rate is 106 to the dollar.
In the case of imports and exports, though, the picture is reversed. Foreign cars are pouring into the United States simply because once they are priced in dollars, they become so much cheaper than their American-built equivalents. West European and Japanese makes of cars have become household names here. Imported cars already make up 25% of total sales, and the figure is still rising. The same thing is happening in the clothing industry. Good news for the importers, whose profits help their own country's balance of payments. Bad news for American manufacturers who find their own sales and profit margins shrinking all the time. And there's another important sector of the American economy that's now in trouble: the farmers. The farmers right across the states of the Midwest have two main problems. First, they too find that the exchange rate gives a huge advantage to their overseas competitors. Secondly, the banks are unwilling to lend the farmers more money because of high interest rates. Another factor has been high land prices, which peaked in the early 80s. This encouraged farmers to borrow heavily with their farms as collateral. But land prices have since slumped. This, combined with the credit squeeze and falling sales, has hit the farmers hard. Since 1981, some 20,000 farms have been sold off at auction.
Everybody off of the ledge and down in the lower steps so that everybody can
Shocked
see.
by the effect on farming communities, state legislators from the main farming states such as Iowa, Illinois, North and South Dakota converged on Washington early in March to plead for government help. They were supporting an emergency bill aiming to give credit relief to those farmers who have slipped heavily into debt, so heavily that the banks are refusing to give them additional loans needed to finance this year's spring planting program. The bill got as far as the White House, but the news was not good for the farmers. President Reagan was about to reject it.
I am not signing the piece of legislation that came down to me today. I am signing a veto.
To add insult to injury, the farmers were then given a piece of typical Reaganomic advice.
We're doing a great deal to help farmers, but I've pleaded and warned repeatedly that just as your families don't have a blank check for whatever your needs may be, neither can government, and that means taxpayers, bail out every farmer hopelessly in debt, or every bank which made imprudent or speculative loans and bet on higher inflation.
Little comfort from the White House, then, for the farmers of the Midwest. We visit Peoria, a typical Midwestern town surrounded by the rich black soil of the prairies, to see the effects of the latest economic developments. One of Peoria's major employers over the years, Caterpillar, is a victim hit from two sides. The strong dollar has cut its sales abroad, and its domestic market farming cannot afford to buy the new machinery. The brand name of Caterpillar has become so familiar that it has come to mean almost any kind of tracked vehicle. But the company cannot live on its past glories. As in the automobile industry, strong opposition has come from Japan, which, with the help of a favorable exchange rate, has taken over 1/4 of the sales market in the United States. And because of the administration's commitment to a free market, there's little the American manufacturers can do. In 1979, 24,000 people worked here at Caterpillar. Half the workforce has since been laid off. The strong dollar has even sent some of Caterpillar's work overseas. It's cheaper to have machine parts made in Haiti or even Scotland, and then to ship them all the way back to the United States. There are growing fears that this trend can only increase.
What do you think will happen?
We asked Tony Green, a local official of the United Auto Workers Union, about his feelings.
Well, I don't like to sound like a pessimist, but if the free trade continues as it is, if the restraints are not put on, and especially if the dollar remains as it is, I do not see a real bright future for Caterpillar as being a U.S.-based company. I hope I'm totally wrong on that. They are making some cuts now that they say is necessary. And what with the losses and so forth that they have had, we do know that there has to be cuts.
Nearly all of the men turning up for work here are middle-aged. The best deal the unions can negotiate is based on the principle of last in, first out, meaning that it's the workers with the longest service who are guaranteed a secure job. Perhaps the worst thing is the uncertainty. Workers who have been laid off in the hope of better times ahead might never work in the factory again.
Well, I've worked for Caterpillar for 5 years, and I've been laid off 3 times, and this time's for good. My future is, don't really know right now. I have no idea. One day at a time.
So even long service at the factory is no guarantee of work.
Term, or you've got long-term employment?
Well, we don't really know. They, you know, because say I've got what, almost 12 years there, and I may be laid off any day now, you know. And say there's only 25 in the shop that's under me, and there's a lot of people out the door with more than 10 years.
So they're firing people even on 10 years?
Well, laying them off, they're saying, but more than likely they'll never call them back.
How long have you been unemployed?
Well, I worked 3 months last summer.
3 months last summer?
Well, I'll tell you, out of 4 years, I worked about 9 months.
So things are not good around here?
Things are bad down here, really bad.
But everybody outside America thinks things are booming in America, that the economy's good and everything's dollar's strong.
That's a bunch of bull.
Strong words from the workforce, but their feelings are understandable. They have produced the machinery which now lies idle and unsold in the parking lots. The inevitable result, the loss of jobs, and the loss of income to a community dependent on the local wage earners. It's one of the unforeseen consequences of the strong dollar. The economic picture is no better in the industrial areas to the west, on the banks of one of the main arteries of American trade, the Mississippi. Along the river here lies what the locals call Quad City, a grouping of 4 industrial towns including Davenport, Moline, and Rock Island. They form one large urban area and have traditionally provided jobs for a wide workforce. Here, too, agricultural machinery production has been one of the mainstays. And here, too, there is a picture of hundreds of expensive pieces of equipment which have become surplus to requirements. The politicians in power say there will have to be more cutbacks in spending and in jobs.
This means that
Factory
some
workers
skilled
are
men
expected
are
to find
ending up
other
in
employment,
jobs
but it's
for
not
which
that easy, as United Auto Workers
totally
official Bill Bowling
overqualified.
explains.
Yes, 70% of the workers in our plant were some of the highest skilled workers in the nation. However, there's only a certain amount of openings for persons like that, and they will have to be retrained in other areas and placed, hopefully, in other jobs.
What sort of places are they ending up if they're not ending up in the industry?
Well, the federal projections are from 1980 to 1990, the majority of the work will be in service. And the problem in this country is if we had a listing of jobs, potential jobs that we're opening, we could train persons for that. However, it's kind of backwards, and we have to train and hopefully place those persons in jobs that are available.
But we could then be talking about people who've been supervising highly technical work on tractor assembly, now working in fast food outlets.
That's a very definite possibility.
Is that what the future holds for many of these skilled workers selling hot dogs or hamburgers? In the last decade or so, the American steel and automobile industries, for example, have had to make cutbacks in production and in the labor force. Now the same thing is happening to the industries dependent on agriculture. The scenes of 50 years ago, when the Great Depression reduced much of American industry to a wasteland, are being repeated in parts of the American Midwest. It's part of the price of having a strong American dollar, say the critics. It's part of the necessary retraction, say the free market economists, before the new dynamic industries emerge to take their place. Whatever the reason, many parts of Quad City have become ugly and depressing sights. For the farmers of the Midwest, there are grim times ahead, too. It is predicted that 1 in 10 farms will go bankrupt this year, a prospect that should get sympathy from an old cowboy like President Reagan. But so far, he has shown no sign of relaxing his hardline economic policies.